I am doing a presentation for my marriage and family class. It is called A Walk Through Marriage. So, as we start off marriage, we often see a trend of this phase called the honeymoon phase. And the most important thing for us to realize is that this honeymoon phase does not last forever. The honeymoon may end, but the fire needs to burn hot, and this is an intentional thing to do. Me personally, I've been married for 6 years to the love of my life and also my best friend. And one thing that we had to come to grips with and realize is after about 2 or 3 years that we started exiting the honeymoon phase, and we had to start being intentional and talking about things, because it's very easy to get into a rhythm of life and the mundane tasks of every day. So it's important to be intentional and keep that fire blazing, but also to listen to one another. If you are wondering where's the spark, where did it used to go before, and that you need to talk to one another, because if you can't talk about it, you can't resolve it. And thirdly, you need to be willing to go out of your way for them. One thing I love doing for my wife is when she needs something from the store, I'm the first to jump up, run to the store, and be there for her. If she is sitting on the couch and she looks comfortable, and she was talking about, oh, I'm a little thirsty, or man, I need to get something to drink. Before she can even sit up on the couch, I'm getting up to run and get her a drink. Just in those little actions every day, that is what keeps the fire burning, and that is what keeps your love going, so the honeymoon phase can go on and on and on and be more than just a phase, but a way of life. And so, like I said a minute ago, it's so important to communicate. Without communication, love has no room to grow. Just like I was saying, when it comes to those moments of when you're feeling that honeymoon phase is phasing out and all, you can't resolve it unless you talk about it. See, based on the Heller and Mona's pioneering work, Markman suggests couples with communication-based risk factors, i.e. poor conflict management or lower protective factors, i.e. low levels of positive communication, would be more vulnerable to the development of relational problems. Don't be scared to talk. And I said talk. You aren't supposed to yell at one another. You aren't supposed to be casting shade or blame on one another. Talk it out, because when you can talk it out, you can work it out. The problem is faced right on the table, and you can go forward in growing a healthier, stronger marriage. And I can do a complete PowerPoint presentation on just communication, but for sake of time, let's move on. Intimacy is also important in a marriage, and it's important that we know that intimacy is more than just sex. The Random House Dictionary of English Language defines intimacy as a close, familiar, and usually affectionate or loving personal relationship with another person that entitles a detailed knowledge or deep understanding of the other, as well as a protective expression of one's thoughts and feelings, which then serve as a token of familiarity. One thing that is important for us to understand is intimacy is more than just sex. Intimacy is also knowing a person on a deeper level than anything else. Yesterday, I had the honor and privilege of my wife riding with me for work, and I had a long day ahead of me. I had to do a 500-mile round-trip drive to Georgia to deliver some product to customers. And the entire way up there and the entire way back, for those 10-plus hours that we were sitting in the truck, we talked, we laughed, we dreamed together, we hurt each other's feelings, and so we worked through things. We had intimate moments with our clothes on because we started seeing the in-depth person of who each other are and where the other person is at. And it's important to in intimacy to take the focus off of you and put it on that other person, because the only way you can get more intimate is by understanding and knowing that person even more. In marriage, it's oftentimes that we come across conflict. I mean, there's two different peoples, like people that are talking, and me personally, like, I don't know if I'm crazy or something, but sometimes I even have conflict with myself, so I can expect to have conflict with another person. So it's important to, as I've been saying in this entire presentation, to talk it out. If you can't talk it out, you can't do the next thing. You can't work it out. And working it out is key in any relationship. And then thirdly, you need to come to an agreement. See, oftentimes you don't come to an agreement immediately. But know what? If you can talk it out and start working it out, you can come to an agreement where whatever the issue is, you agreed to not do a certain thing because it affects him or it affects her, and you agree to work through certain things to, if it's a time constraint and you were talking and they don't want you staying late at work on a Monday night, but they would prefer you home for dinner. And if that is a possibility, how can you work that out? Do you get to work a little bit earlier, or maybe you work a little bit later on Friday so you have less to do on Monday? So it's about working that out and coming to an agreement of a plan to get past whatever conflict it will be. And not everyone will always like the agreement. You may not like going to work earlier to make sure you get off earlier. You may like to sleep in a little bit, but know what? It's worth it so that you two are happy together and growing together, and come and don't let something trivial like an extra hour of sleep, go to bed earlier the night before, but to not let that extra hour get in the way of the intimate personal relationship you guys have together. Money is a crazy thing that causes a lot of strife and conflict in marriage. See, but the first thing we must understand about money is the first thing you must do is give it to the Lord. You must tithe first, because you know what? If you don't give him the first 10%, he can't bless the other 90%. The second thing is to agree on a budget, on the budget. If you can't agree on the budget, I don't mean both of you have to do the budget all the time. Me personally, my wife, she does the budget. She does an amazing job at it, better than I could ever do. But she is intentional to make sure I sit down and we talk about it. We talk about the budget and where we're spending money and where we need to not spend so much money, and we go over all these things so we are both on the same page. But then it's important to set goals. So this is something you don't have to do every paycheck, but it's something you should do at least once a month or once a quarter, is set goals for your money. Because you need to be intentional, because otherwise it'll just waste away. So if you set the goals for your money, like saving for a house so many years out, or saving for the down payment on a car, or saving to pay off a credit card, or saving for a new vacuum cleaner, or whatever it may be, it's important to set goals on your budget and come up with an agreement on it. Because if you're two different people, if you are thinking you're going to go out and buy the latest pair of Nikes, and she's thinking she's going to put an extra $120 in savings, and there's room for conflict there unless you guys can talk and say, hey, I actually need these Nikes because I've worn a hole through my sole of my other Nikes, so I need to get shoes. And then she can be, okay, well, next month we'll put that extra money into savings. And you work through those things. in a peaceful, loving manner to be able to care for one another. Starting a family, this is something that my wife and I, if you don't include pets in that, we haven't done that yet, but we are talking about it. We're in that first stage of talking about it and agreeing on it. We're talking about names. We're agreeing on when we want to start trying to start a family. It's important that you both come into agreement on that, and then you got to prepare for it. Kids are, I'm told, are expensive, and you need to be as ready as you can. I'm told also you're never really prepared for it, but you can do everything you can. You can read the books. You can prepare a room in your house for them. Get them a bed. Get them clothes. Get all the necessities for them before they come into the world. And so, yeah, starting a family is something very important that must be talked about. Adding children into a family is important. My mom always says, children are a gift from God to both husband and wife. It is their responsibility to raise them together for God. It's important to understand that if they are a gift from God, you must in turn give your child back to God, because you are responsible for raising God's son or God's daughter. And if you look at it from that point of view, adding children into a family dynamic, both parents giving 100%, raising God's children, you both will take it on a such heavier level and be able to do it better as a team. Parenting. Parenting is a team effort. It takes a husband and a wife. I see, as a youth pastor, I see a lot of my students that have issues. They're either missing a mom or a dad. Both parents contribute to the upbringing of a child in such a way that it turns them into a beautiful, full person that God has created them to be. But both parents must give 100%. It's not, I get them 50% of the time and you get them the other 50% of the time. It's both. I'm going to be 100% a father, and my wife Sabrina is going to be 100% a mother. And that doesn't end. That is consistent and doesn't change. And also, it's important. My mom said it's important to agree on a consequence. When I was interviewing both my parents who had been married for almost 40 years, it's important to agree on the consequence together. Sometimes you don't just throw out consequences to your son or daughter. If they stole a piece of gum from a convenience store and they knew better, it's important to sit down in a room separate from the child and say, hey, little Susie stole some minty gum from the kangaroo, and we need to talk about what should we do. What should be the consequence? First off, she needs to pay it back. Secondly, what do we need to do then? Does she need to be grounded? Does she need to have certain toys taken away? Does she need to get a spanking? What needs to happen here? And you need to come to an agreement together and then present a unified front in front of your child. A unified, loving front in front of your child. Being intimate as parents, I'm told, is a little bit tricky. But if you are intentional and you make a plan, it can be a beautiful thing. Kids add a little bit of craziness to your life, but it's important to plan things out. If you make a plan of Sunday afternoon naps, or your little Susie goes to bed at 6 o'clock, and after 6 o'clock, it's mom and dad time, whether that's those intimate conversations we talked about, or whether it's actual sex and growing your marriage in that direction. But it's also important to invest in your marriage. What does investing in your marriage looks like? With a child, sometimes finances can be constrained and tight. But know what? You can occasionally put in the budget for those flowers to bring home, if flowers means the world to your wife. Or if you are a wife, you could put in put a little extra in on making sure like the little things are done. Like if your husband likes a clean house, making sure that house is clean, or whatever it may be. Since you are intimate and understand each other, do something that shows you were thinking about that other person and being there for them. And if you can afford it, do a date night. Do a date night. Please do a date night at least once a month. Preferably more often, because the more intimate one-on-one time you can spend together, the better you can parent your child together. And it's important to make that investment. Keyword investment. It's not an expense, it's an investment. You are going to get a return on that by the strengthening of your marriage. Faith is so important in a marriage. It's important that as a couple, you spend time in prayer together. That you talk about God and the Word of God together, because when you can talk about it and grow together, you get closer and unified. I've been told that it's important to think of your relationship together and your relationship with God as a pyramid. Each one of you are on a base foundation, and God is at the top of the pyramid. The closer each one of you grows to God, the closer you will grow together. And it's important that you work through life's struggles together. Life isn't always easy. It's not always predictable. But when things come up, when struggles of life happen, if you talk about it and point each other towards the Word and pray together about it, you can work through it. And eventually, it may take time. Some may take a week, some may take years. But if you work together through it, you can grow your faith, you can grow your relationship together, and work through that struggle together, and be stronger in your marriage, stronger in your relationship with God, and stronger as an individual person in your marriage together. And we must also, as far as faith in the family, we serve the Lord together. Joshua 24:15b says, "But as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord." My mom said in the interview, a family that prays together stays together. And parents that raise their child to love the Lord, the children will love their parents in turn. So it's important that we make it a point to push our children not just to go to church on a Sunday or a Wednesday night or be a part of a small group. It's important for us as parents to have time together and spend time in the Word together and teach them how to get in the Word for themselves and grow as a person. And red flags in your marriage, some red flags to look out for and in your marriage is when you have not invested in your marriage in a week. And I'm not saying you have to go on a weekly Friday night date on the town or anything like that. I'm saying, like, are you making small goals to be there for your spouse every week? Like, at least once a week. Like, some people can do every day, but if you can only do once a week, that's once a week. Maybe that's like getting up and getting them some water when they're sitting relaxing on the couch, or making them coffee in the morning when they like coffee, or preparing them breakfast, or something out of the ordinary just to show that you love them and that you're thinking about them. Another red flag is when you do not have dreams together. I've heard and seen a lot of families, their dream is to have kids. Their dream is to raise godly children, and they do it so well, and then 18 years comes and goes, and that kid grows up and is out of the house, and they no longer have a dream together. Me and my wife, we have dreams of raising children together. We have dreams of planting a church together. We have dreams of going and being missionaries together. We have all these dreams that go all the way up until us dreaming about going to heaven together. Like, it's important to have dreams in every stage of your life and to constantly let those dreams, some dreams are going to die, some dreams are going to be born. It's important to always be dreaming together, always be growing together, and that is another form of intimacy. So you need to be intimate and dream together. And another red flag is when you don't rely on each other. God has placed you together as a team. He has ordained you as a team. And when you can't rely on your spouse to have your back. Whether it's in a conversation or whatever it may be. Like, if you can't rely on your spouse to have your back, that's a red flag and should be addressed by the spouse that doesn't trust the other spouse. I know I trust my wife with my life, and she trusts me with her life. And we know that if I have something come up, she's going to have my back, and I'm going to have her back, because that is a strength of marriage. And if we couldn't have that, that would be a red flag to be aware of. And so here is a few of my sources, just if you want to look them up on your own. And but it's important as we walk through marriage together, just to spend time together, to be intimate together, to talk, and to really just work through things together. You're a team. And continue that team to grow and love the Lord together. My name is Tucker French, and this is the conclusion of my presentation.